In this interview, I talked to yoga and Pilates expert Kristin McGee. She's worked with top models, athletes and Hollywood celebrities like Tina Fey, LeAnn Rimes and actor Steve Martin. I was really excited to talk to Kristin. She's a trained actress and a professional model, so she knows all about looking great. So I hope you enjoy the interview. So Kristin, tell us the story of how you first discovered yoga.
Okay, I'm originally from Pocatello, Idaho, which is a smaller town in southeastern Idaho, and always wanted to be an actress growing up. So I applied to New York University acting school, and I moved to New York in 1994 to begin my acting training. And I had always done dance and theater, but it wasn't until I moved to New York that I discovered yoga. And at first, this was in the early 90s, so it was still very obscure and kind of on the fringe, and not a lot of people were doing it. But because I was in such an alternative school in New York and I was studying theater, yoga was a part of our curriculum and part of our warm-up. I fell in love with it. I felt like I'd always been doing it the first day I did it.
And talk me through the actual health benefits of yoga and how it actually works.
Okay, originally when I was doing yoga in my acting school, it was for breath control and for better breath capacity. So I think first and foremost, the breathing aspect of yoga is so good for health because we don't even realize how important our breath is. And at the very basic level, if you're not breathing, you're not alive. So the deeper your breath is, the more expansive it is and the more aware of it you are, the more full of life you are, the more like everything feels better. Your cardiovascular system works better, your lungs feel better, you're able to do a lot more of your daily activities with ease, with grace. It helps you with your flexibility, which is another huge thing in life. They've even just done a recent study where they've noticed people who have more flexibility actually have less heart problems. Right. And it's also a great strengthening tool, not only for your muscles, but also for your bones. So we oftentimes think of going to the gym and just strengthening our muscles, but yoga gives us a really good stability for our bones and for our structure. And our bones are super important for everything, for weight-bearing activities, and they've done studies again where yoga training has really helped with bone density, and as people get older, to help with the osteoarthritis and to really keep the bones healthy, the organs healthy, the muscles healthy and strong. I think there's just such an endless amount of benefits from yoga, from better sleep, better posture, better breath, to more mindful living, eating mindfully, having better relationship with ourselves and with others.
So what are some of the common mistakes that you see people make?
I think trying to get too far too fast. And a lot of times I recommend people at least take a one-on-one, a private to begin with, or go to a very basic class and not compare themselves with others. I think comparing yourself to everyone else in the room can be very detrimental because you're trying to do what they're doing, and it should be complete own body experience. Listen to your own body. Try and get the forms correctly from the beginning, because it's a lot harder to break a habit and relearn the right way than it is to just start right from the beginning. That's another reason why I like studying either one-on-one or with an instructor that's going to really break it down in the beginning, so that maybe in the very beginning, if you have to go really slow just to make sure you have every posture correctly, it's so much better in the long run. Chaturanga, which is a kind of a push-up position that you do in yoga, a lot of times people let their shoulders roll forward and they end up getting shoulder injuries. So it's important to keep the shoulders down and back in that position in chaturanga. It's important to always hinge from your hips and not from your waist. A lot of times people think their back starts, where you would zip up your pants, like where you'd button your pants. And that's actually, you're starting much deeper down at your sits bone. So you want to hinge from that deep part of your back. And that's what allows your flexibility to grow faster, as opposed to just kind of rolling over from the middle of your spine. Also, I think people aren't aware or taught early in the yoga practice about using their core strength while they're practicing. So they get disconnected from their center, and then they make the pose look correct, but it might not be really integrated. So it might seem overwhelming at first, but if you stick with your breathing, start very slow with the basics, and make sure you get the positions right from the beginning, then you won't injure yourself, and you'll really have a practice for a long time.
What should somebody expect who's actually going to start yoga for the first time?
That's the best thing about yoga, is I feel like the learning curve is so fast. Like all of a sudden you'll see many results like almost immediately. I think the very end of your very first yoga class, when you're in final rest, corpse pose, it's savasana in Sanskrit term, you'll feel all of a sudden a shift, which is so amazing. I think that's why so many people after their very first yoga class is like, wow, I had no idea that was going to happen. But I also think they are a little surprised at the amount of work it takes. That you might look at some of the postures or these stretches and you might think, oh, that's nothing. And then to get your body into those positions can be extremely, not only do you have to work hard to do it, but uncomfortable. Like the discomfort level at first, people go, wow. And I don't want people to be afraid of discomfort, because I think we've gotten so comfortable in society that sometimes they think it's painful, and it's not really pain. It's just new to them. Like they've never used that part of their body. So it's more an awareness. So a lot of times I'll say to my students now, is that painful, or is it awareness? Are you aware of something that you've never felt before? And if it's a pain, like if you're overstretching or you stop breathing, that's where the breath is so important, that the breath will really help you modify and know exactly how far to push and how far to back off and things like that. But I think people are first of all kind of blown away with how difficult it is, but also how wonderful it feels and how easy it is to really, get it underneath you, like get at least the basic system underneath you very soon. And then, unfortunately, it's like glacier speed. I find even myself, after practicing now, 15 years or so, there's still tiny little things that just, it's every day. It's a practice, which is great because it reminds me that in life is not a sprint, life is a marathon, and we'd rather be able to last through the entire thing than burn out right away. So it's wonderful because you'll learn it quickly, but then you'll start to discover that, wow, it's going to be a lifelong learning tool and experience to have, which is really wonderful, I think.
So there's a lot of incorrect information out there about yoga. What are the most common things that people misunderstand?
Yoga is not just exercise. Yoga is a little more, I think it's deeper than that. It has more of a breathing tool. It's not just about going to the gym and getting results. I think it's about really shifting the way we live and the way we move and just our awareness. So I think that's really wonderful thing about the yoga practice. There are some myths too that, their yoga is going to detoxify you and do this and do that, like the Bikram method. Oh, you're going to sweat all these toxins out. Well, some of those things yoga is not a cure-all, and yoga is not, there are some wonderful things yoga can do to heal, but also yoga teachers are not doctors. So when someone comes up to me after class and says, look at my ACL of my knee, it's torn, get an MRI, go to a doctor, and also use yoga as a therapeutic tool. But don't assume that a yoga teacher is a doctor or your therapist, or they're going to change everything for you. Yes, it's a good workout, and it will be great for your body, and you'll get in great shape. And also it will affect you on another level, on a physiological, psychological level. But there's still another whole part of life, like you might still need to see a doctor. You might still want to see your psychologist if you're having other issues in life, and you still might want to do other forms of exercise. I personally love to still ski and hike and run and do some weight training. And so I don't think it's an end-all be-all.
So when you first started practicing yoga, what was the most important thing that you did to stick and make sure that yoga became a habit?
I was consistent about it. And even if I couldn't do the hour-and-a-half long class every day or make it to class every day, I did something no matter what. So I think a little bit of something is always better than nothing. And it becomes a habit like brushing your teeth. So if you do 2 sun salutations in the morning when you wake up, it just starts to become habit. And then the next thing you know, you're waking up, you're doing some sun salutations, you're doing some standing poses, you're doing some forward bends. Or if you're more of an afternoon, evening person, I'm a morning person by far. But if you come home at the end of the day and the first thing you do is just like, okay, I'm just going to do like one standing pose or one sun salutation, all of a sudden it's the same thing. It just becomes a habit. And I think that a lot of times it's intimidating because many yoga classes can be about an hour and a half long. And you feel, oh, it's so daunting. By the time I get to the yoga studio and I start the yoga class, I just don't have time for it. So give yourself some slack. Don't beat yourself up. And just start slowly. I mean, 20 minutes a day of yoga is wonderful. And the more studies I think I've read, and the older I've gotten in my practice, sometimes I find that less is more. So I think in the beginning, we almost feel like we have to do so much. You know, we get so overwhelmed. Oh, but if we can't do an hour and a half and another this and that, then we just won't do anything at all. So try and just get a couple minutes in the beginning every day. And then you'll find that you actually open up the space to have the time to go to the studios and take those longer classes if you just at least make it that habit on your own.
And are there any resources that you'd recommend for people to check out?
I do like, even though he is an Ashtanga teacher, Richard Freeman's work is really wonderful on an entire level. He's got some pranayama tapes, some breathing lessons. He has a wonderful book called the CD set, actually, and a book called The Yoga Matrix, and it kind of explains a lot of the yoga philosophy if you're more interested in going that deep. And he has some yoga DVDs. I have a series of yoga DVDs that I've done, but there's many yoga DVDs out there that are wonderful. I mean, Shiva Ray has some wonderful yoga DVDs. You know, even I think Rodney Yee has some beginner DVDs, Baron Baptiste. There's a lot of wonderful resources like that. And I think what's so great about yoga DVDs is, you know, a class is maybe $15, $20, $25 depending. And a yoga DVD can be anywhere from about that price, but you have it for, you know, over and over and over again. So you could build a collection of great yoga DVD practices and be able to practice at home a lot. But I also think it's great to listen to your own self and just start doing your own practice. Try to not always have to go to a class or watch a DVD. The Manduka mat is a really wonderful yoga mat. It's kind of like the Mercedes-Benz of yoga mats. It's a thick black yoga mat called the Manduka mat. And it's not really an easy one to travel with. They do make a light one that's eco-friendly as well. But it's a nice one to have at home because it's padded enough that you can do a lot of, it doesn't hurt when you lie down. And it's just a really good supportive mat. You can also use it for Pilates and other things. And then I do recommend getting a yoga strap, some blocks, some sandbags are nice, some yoga blankets, things like that if you want to bolster, or some props at home are always nice. Iyengar's book, The Iyengar Way, wonderful big glossy photo book that shows every yoga pose and then broken down with the Sanskrit language and how to get into the posture. And so that's nice if people like to look or read from a book or learn from a book. And anatomy books are nice. Just there's even like an anatomy coloring book that's kind of nice. You can. Oh, there's also a yoga anatomy book, which is really neat. It shows almost like the skeletal system in every yoga pose. So,
who did that book?
That is, you know what? Let me check. I have it on my bookshelf. I can even show you it. That's here. This is a really wonderful book. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
It's The Key Muscles of Hatha Yoga, and that's by Ray Long. And he's got 2 books now, so that's really neat because it shows, you know, it shows the bones, it shows like skeletal articulation. I mean, you can't really, I don't know if you can really see much on here, but I find books like that are really neat because it has even little quizzes at the end, like little chapter quizzes. Like I think the more you know about your body, the easier it is too to do class. Like, oh, this is my rear deltoid, and this is what's bothering my shoulder. If I let my shoulder roll too far forward, I'm going to start to injure my rotator cuff. So you can put everything together. It's really great. That's a wonderful book.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
There's another man too, Paul Greeley, Grilley, and he has like yoga anatomy videos that you can watch as well. And he talks about everyone having a different bone structure and to not push things past certain limits. Like someone's arm bone might move more in the socket than others. So that's nice too, because it teaches you that we're all different. Everybody, again, don't compare yourself with anyone else in class.
Okay, so what's your number one insider secret to improving health and fitness that people can do right now?
Take a deep breath. That's immediate. That's going to immediately bring more oxygen to the brain, to the blood, to the body, to the lungs. And again, just the deeper you breathe, everything in life starts to shift. And I think that, you know, I have a yoga teacher who she always says, 90% of your nutrients can be taken in through the air that you breathe. You know, she calls it space dust. That pranayama, or to breathe in the Ujjayi way in yoga class, it's inhale and exhale out the nose, and you almost create like a Darth Vader sound.
Is that at the back of your throat or something?
Yeah, and she calls that breathing just like you're just taking in space dust and you're just nourishing your body. So take it. I think that's the very first thing I tell someone is take a deep breath. You know, inhale, exhale, and just pause and give yourself a moment to say, okay, this is what I want. Because then everything becomes like, you're not just doing things mindlessly, but you have a reason behind why you do things.
And there's lots of different types of yoga. What form of yoga do you actually practice, and why is that special?
There are many types of yoga, and because yoga originated so long ago in India as a full system, there's even the extreme kind of just kind of Kriya yoga, like cleansing yoga techniques, and more of the meditation yoga, the breathing type yoga. And in my vinyasa is what it's called practice, we take the asanas, which are the poses, and we thread them together. So the vinyasa is kind of a fluid motion, a fluid movement, and you're linking each breath to each movement. So it's almost like swimming on land, or it's a very much like more of a Tai Chi or a dance style of yoga where you flow through the movements and you build your own body heat. And then some of the poses will hold, and we'll really get deeper into them once we've built up that heat. So in vinyasa yoga, what's really nice is it's fluid, and I find that it kind of combines a lot of aspects. It's got the strength and the structure and the fluidity. So you're getting a little cardio, you're getting the strength aspect. But it also can change. So unlike, say, Ashtanga or Bikram, where they have a set series every time you practice, with Vinyasa, it's more free flow, so you can feel your way through it. Like if my hips are really sore one day and I want to do a more hip opening type practice, I can start with maybe a sun salutation warm-up that's fairly similar, but then I can go into many different poses. The Ashtanga practice I used to study, and I like it because it's good to do the same thing a lot and see where your body holds patterns, but I also got bored with the repetition. Mm-hmm. So I really like being able to constantly mix it up. The best thing about yoga in general is just staying open-minded and being creative. Yeah. I think people get a little too rigid, you know, especially when they're practicing a certain form, or well, only Ashtanga is the way to practice, or only this way is the way to do it. And I think, like, if everyone was just a little more open-minded, then there wouldn't be like yoga is about union. So we're not trying to like separate from everyone else. Just keep an open mind and experiment. And you'll find what type of yoga you like the best for your personal self. But I have friends who absolutely swear by Bikram, or they love the Ashtanga method. And I think that's great. I think if you find something you like, stick with it.
So what do you do differently now than when you first started practicing yoga?
You know what I do different now, because I've been studying or practicing for so long, is I make sure to get insight and keep it fresh all the time by always doing something, taking a new class, doing a different yoga DVD, studying with someone brand new. we're always students. And sometimes I notice that as we get more secure in our practice or in our teaching, sometimes we can get a little rigid and think that we know so much all of a sudden. We're just like the expert on it all. When in reality, sometimes the more you know, almost the less you know. And it's like, oh, I'm such a beginner. I've gotten so deep in this discovery, I can actually flip a new page now and start a whole new level. So I think keeping it fresh and keeping a student's mind, you know, and also learning from your students. I notice when I teach new students or when I bring in new information, I'm almost teaching myself more. So I try and keep just an open mind.
So what's your advice to people who break their habit? How can they get back on track again?
Think back on the times when it was really working in your life and how you made it work. And then also get back to those feelings that you'd have, say at the end of a yoga class, or remember the feelings that you had during that time when you really were more consistent with your practice, and just allow that to come back into your life. Because sometimes we are our own worst enemies and we end up not doing the things that are so good for us that we love. So we put everyone else first, or we just start to lose that. And so I think it's kind of like, again, that take a deep breath and go, gosh, why am I not doing something that I love so much? And then go back, you know, when I was really doing that, how did I make it fit and how did I make it work? And just try and start to slowly integrate that again.
That's it.
Wow, yay! So nice talking to you.
It's been brilliant talking to you. Thanks for your time today. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.